I love Makita. It's been really good for me. You know, I like Snap-on, but I'm not going to go out and buy a whole Snap-on box full of Snap-on tools because I don't have 50 grand. Buy what you can afford and buy what will do the job until you can upgrade. I'm going to just start with my most valuable tool. So this is a Makita Power Shear. It has a square hardened blade inside that goes up and down, and it's tapered into the bottom tooth. So the metal goes in this way and it goes up and down and shears. This tool has been the tool that I've cut every piece of metal with. That's sheet metal that I work with. This has lasted me 15 years. I've created almost all of my sculptures with this tool. It's a really tough tool. Another tool that's been really handy is I use both corded and cordless grinders. I use all kinds of different sanding bits to, clean off sharp edges. Mostly is what I do when I'm cutting with this. I'll just dress the edges, so because I still got to work with it, whether I'm shaping it or whatever, it'll have sharp edges. So I just take the sharp edges off of everything before I start metal shaping it. Does two things. One, protects my gloves, protects my hands from getting cut. But if I'm shaping it in the bag here, or even on the power hammer, it protects the leather of my tools that I'm working with, and I don't cut up the leather and put holes in it, because this is actually full of sand, and if I had a hole in it, the sand would go everywhere. So another tool that is really, really useful, and I do this for metal finishing, and I learned this through the auto body industry and building cars and doing metal repair on cars. So when you're done your welding and you've done the grinding of your welding, and you're wanting to blend that weld out into the rest of the metal and make it look like you weren't even there welding, this is a great tool. So this is a dual action air sander. So it vibrates and spins at the same time. So that's why they call it a dual action. This one doesn't have an adjustable throttle, but sometimes they'll have a little wheel on the side, and you can control the amount of air pressure going into it, which will control how fast it vibrates and how fast it sands. And that's really, I'll probably upgrade to another one from Dynabrade that has a wheel to control the air. You can also buy an attachment that goes onto your airline previous to your airline snapping in, and that'll have a wheel, so you can control the air volume by buying a separate attachment before it actually goes into the tool. And you can use that attachment on almost any air tool depending on what you're using. But this is really invaluable for finishing work, and I'll be using this a lot on the Elon head, especially to blend out all the welds after I'm done welding.
Is there a reason you have all Makita?
I love Makita. It's been really good for me. They are a little more powerful than, if you go and grab a DeWalt or something like that. They just have a little bit more strength to them. Their pricing is very reasonable. Milwaukee is coming out with some tools and starting to catch up. There's some other brands that are trying to catch up, but for me, I've always used Makita. They've always held up really well. I've really worked them hard and abused them hard. The batteries really hold up well. I've had tools, Makita tools and batteries that have lasted me over 10 years of hard use. If it works and it works good and I don't have a whole lot of problems with it, I keep going back to it. So, and again, their prices are competitive. I'm not paying ridiculous prices for a tool that does a job that, I always try to find a tool that's, built well and long lasting, but at the same time, it has to be reasonable. You can't be like, I like Snap-on, but I'm not going to go out and buy a whole Snap-on box full of Snap-on tools because I don't have 50 grand, when you could replace exactly what you're buying for 50 grand for maybe 10 or 15 grand, so common sense has to prevail at some point. But it has its place. So for me, when it comes to Snap-on tools, their lifetime warranty, their wrenches and their sockets are unbeatable. So there's no other tool in the market that has the hardness of their steel that they use in the Snap-on tools and the quality that their wrenches and their sockets are made. So you can buy a cheaper brand and yeah, it'll do the job, but if you're really, really working it, it'll strip, or the wrenches will stretch out a little bit and they'll strip your bolt, and a Snap-on is, I guess it could do that, but it takes a lot more to damage a Snap-on tool than it does the average Joe tool. So for Snap-on, I'll buy certain tools that are really good quality that I want to last, but for most of the cost involved in really expensive tools like that, it's almost worth buying a cheaper tool that you can replace 2 or 3 times for the same cost as a really expensive one, you know, especially if you're not something that you use all the time. So generally cheaper tools will always, especially if you're starting out in the trade, buy what you can afford and buy what will do the job until you can upgrade. For me, I mean, you're just throwing money away on something that would do the same job. So.